From snakes to squids, here are 15 animals you did not know could fly. 15. Turkeys. The chances are, if you live in North America, you observe the holiday of Thanksgiving. And what is more symbolic of Thanksgiving than the turkey? Now, the image that normally springs to mind might be a cooked bird placed atop a platter with its meat ready to be carved accordingly. So, it is difficult to imagine these birds can actually fly. The domestic variety is the least likely to display this ability and normally only flies for short distances, and that's while they're still young. Wild turkeys, though, are known to be agile flyers when pressed to evade potential predators, and normally they can fly close to the ground for around a quarter of a mile. 14. Gliding ants. These creatures were first documented in rainforests of Peru as the only insects without wings that can actively coordinate their descent. Like many other creatures that glide through the forest, these ants will glide back to the tree trunk they live on, should they fall or be knocked from a branch. Experts note that the ants often glide abdomen first rather than head first, and that flight plan seems to work well. The insects have been shown to have an 85% success rate of landing on the same tree they were knocked out of. It's estimated that there are some 25 species of ants that have the ability to glide, and with these ants, the queens do have wings, while the workers don't. 13. Flying ants. Now, as opposed to those gliding ants, these insects are capable of true flight. Called alates, they appear when it's time to repopulate the species. They show up during mating periods for the ants and can appear in large swarms. Often referred to as nuptial flight or dispersal, the swarm is composed of winged males and females who have emerged to mate, usually in the late spring through early summer. After the process is completed, the males will die off, and once the female finds a suitable nesting site, her wings will break off and she will never fly again. 12. Cockroaches. It seems there's just no place you can escape these pests. They can even bug you in the air. Well, while they're not always known to use the ability, cockroaches do have wings and they can fly for short distances. While the American cockroach can do this, not all species are flight ready, and even those that can fly will rarely flex their wings, thankfully so. 11. Geckos. Did you know this lizard has the ability to fly up to some 200 feet? It sounds more impressive than it actually is, though. The arboreal geckos have complex webbing that surrounds the body. The webbing serves as flaps to help the gecko control its fall, like a parachute, after it leaps into the air. At the end of the descent, the animal executes a swoop motion to ensure that it enjoys a soft landing. 10. Airborne amphibians. We found a couple of examples of flying frogs while researching the episode. Wallace's flying frog is found in the Malay Peninsula and is known for its brilliant coloration, as well as for some interesting physical characteristics. It has long limbs with webbing that extends to the tips of its fingers and toes, and that, along with a fringe of skin that stretches between its limbs, allows it to parachute high from the treetops onto the forest floor. With oversized toe pads, they can safely land at distances of more than 50 feet. Meanwhile, the Malabar frog is found in western India, and it is known to use its webbed feet to trap air, again kind of like a parachute. In that way, the frog can leap down or glide down treetops to break its fall. The gliding jumps can measure up to more than 100 times the animal's body length of 4 inches. 9. Flying marsupials. Well, if it's an opossum, you know it's a marsupial. And if it is a marsupial, you know that it is likely found in Australia. And that's where the majority of the world's marsupials are located. And it's no different with the sugar glider, although it is also found in New Guinea, Tasmania, and certain islands of Indonesia. Although not related to the flying squirrel, they are similar in their habits, their appearance, and the way in which they locomote through the air. These nocturnal flyers usually travel from tree to tree, rarely touching the ground, which enables them to avoid predators there as well as in the air. Sugar gliders get the name because they favor foods rich in sugary nectar. In recent years, they've become popular around the world as exotic pets. 8. Colugo. Now, the best known flying mammals are bats, of course, but as we've noted on our list, there are some other mammals that can also travel through the air, although gliding would be the more appropriate verb. With the colugo, we have an airborne mammal that is well adapted for flight. Extra flaps of skin located between the legs allow them to glide between lower and higher locations. That allows them to travel for more than 200 feet with only a slight loss of height. The arboreal animals are found in Southeast Asia. Did you know they're often called flying lemurs? But true lemurs are primates, unlike the colugo. Some sources do suggest, though, that they are actually more closely related to bats than to primates. 7. Squirrels. Any fan of the old Rocky and Bullwinkle show will tell you that squirrels can fly and moose can talk. Well, squirrels can fly, or glide, that much is certain. There are about 50 species of the airborne rodents, and their ability is due to something called a patagium. That's a fuzzy membrane that stretches from the critter's wrist to ankle and functions like a parachute. Using the long tail to provide stability while in flight, they can use the limbs to steer and control the glide path as they maneuver from tree to tree. Flights approaching 300 feet have been recorded as the animals make mid-air course corrections. Experts say the squirrels start practicing the gliding skill when they're only 5 weeks old, and at 10 weeks, they fly off on their own. 6. Flying fish. Well, now this one you might already know about, but it's still more than worthy of a list. There are more than 60 species of flying fish that can self-propel themselves out of the water and then use their wing-like fins to glide for impressive distances. It's not unusual for these creatures to attain speeds exceeding 40 miles per hour, and should they catch a strong updraft, they can travel distances of around 1,300 feet while reaching a height of 20 feet above the water's surface. Experts say the unusual ability is a type of defense mechanism and serves to help them evade predators. Hopefully that includes evading fishing operations as well. The meat and eggs of flying fish are often considered staples in the cuisines of certain cultures. 5. Mobula Ray. This is another type of flying fish, and it's a pretty spectacular creature. Mobula Rays look similar to manta rays, to which they are related, but they're referred to as flying rays for a good reason. With its disc measuring some 17 feet wide, it's known to suddenly breach the waters and show off with a series of twists, high jumps, and belly flops. Now, it's still unknown just why they do this, but some experts think it involves communication or escaping predators. 4. Draco Lizards. Just to make clear, this creature has no connection to Draco Malfoy, the character in the Harry Potter books and movies. That said, the Draco Lizard is something of a magical beast in that it appears like a tiny dragon. In fact, they are known as flying dragons thanks to their possession of what appear to be wings. Those are actually membranes connected to the ribs which allow them to fly or glide, since they are not really capable of powered flight. But they have been documented of gliding for more than 200 feet, which is a pretty good distance to cover, given the lizards are less than 8 inches long, including the tail. They are fairly common in the forests of Southeast Asia. 3. Snakes. The slithering reptiles don't have wings exactly, but certain species are known to fly through the air. Ranging from Southeast Asia to China and Sri Lanka, the flying snake is more technically a gliding snake. Using scales along its belly, it manages to climb vertically up a tree until it reaches the end of a branch. Once it maps out a flight path and destination from its vantage point, the snake will thrust its body up and away from the tree. Propelled forward, the snake then controls its flight by using a pseudo-concave wing, created by flaring out its ribs and pulling at its gut. While making a series of serpentine undulations in midair, it manages to stabilize itself enough to land safely. Overall, experts say there are 5 known species of flying snakes, ranging in size from 2 feet to about 4 feet long. One, known as the paradise tree snake, is said to be a popular choice as a pet in Europe. 2. Ballooning spiders. Now, these critters can be scary enough when you encounter them on the ground. So, how scary would it be to see spiders flying through the air? Along with certain other invertebrates, the arachnids can employ a method to effectively move from one location to another via airborne express, so to speak. The spiders will climb to a high point, then release fine silken threads or gossamer threads, not unlike a parachute. The threads are caught by an updraft of wind until the creature achieves liftoff. The means by which they travel through the air is called ballooning or kiting, and it can send them quite a distance. Sailors have reported finding ballooning spiders in the sails nearly 1,000 miles from land, and they have been detected at altitudes of 16,000 feet above sea level. The trips are generally much shorter and quite perilous, with a high mortality rate. Those that do survive are thought to use ballooning as a way of invading isolated mountaintops and islands. 1. Jet-propelled molluscs. Along with snails, clams, mussels, and octopods, squid are classified as molluscs. One thing these creatures are not typically noted for is their ability to fly, but there are several species of squid that prove an exception to that perception. That includes the Pacific flying squid, also known as the Japanese flying squid. It has been observed using a means of jet propulsion to shoot itself out of the water. By using a muscle called a siphon, water is taken in from one side and then squirted forcefully out the other, allowing the creature to propel itself, not unlike a jet engine. Using that unique means of aerial locomotion, the squid have been seen flying for around 100 feet or 30 meters above the water's surface at speeds approaching 25 miles per hour. They can be found in Japanese waters, up the coastlines of China and Russia, and towards the coasts of Alaska and Canada.